is also the glare's not blinding everybody.
Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, it's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we are going to let our guests introduce themselves. Mr. Andrew Heymann, can you introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers at home?
Sure, JR, thanks for having me on this. This is great. As you said, my name is Andrew Heymann, from Buffalo, New York, originally. Go Bills. And this anthology is my first professionally. I can say that because I'm actually getting paid. Hopefully, if you sell some running gig. I was in the Army for 24 years, infantry officer. I just retired 13 months ago. Enjoying retirement, playing Mr. Mom. And when I'm not playing Mr. Mom, I'm writing, and I write science fiction, fantasy. I've had a few other short stories published, like in online magazines and things like that. But the one that's included in this anthology is my first professional gig.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Mr. Dan Kemp.
And demented pet parent. As you can see, we've already had a dog and a cat interruption. But if I lock them out of the room, then they just howl more and more and more. All right. Former ROTC cadet, former infantry NCO, former this, that, the other thing. 2 novels out, but this is my first anthology appearance and hopefully not my last.
Outstanding. All right, next we got Mr. Keith Hedger.
Hi, I'm Keith Hedger. I was a whole lot of different things. I was an engineer and an NC and a signal guy in the Army and an NCO, and I was the ringleader on this. This anthology was my idea, and to borrow a line from Dan Kemp, it seemed like a good idea when I started.
Or as they say, but did you die?
I did not.
So it's success.
Yeah.
That's the universal standard. All right, and last but certainly not least, we got Mr. Michael LaVoice.
Oh, hey, yeah, Michael LaVoice, author of Galaxy's Most Wanted, 4-book series available at Amazon.com. Pimp the product, ABC baby, if you want the knife set. I did 4 years as a generator mechanic in an air defense artillery unit in Germany, and then briefly in Saudi, Kuwait, and Iraq. For the first Gulf War, nothing like what you guys went through. It was a 6-month field problem with live ammo. It's basically all it was for me.
Now we know the background for your story.
Yeah, you think? I didn't even change the names. There really is a drip god almighty. And I hope he reads it. But since I got out as an E4, so I'm Spec 4 Mafia for life. And I really, really, really enjoyed writing this short story in this anthology. Man, every single story in here just brings back so many memories because so much of it is so common to all the military experiences that we've all had. Man, it's just a blast reading. I love it.
Yeah, I was so good at being an E4 that they did it 3 times. Got promoted. Celebrated a little too hard, went back down like Chutes and Ladders, did it again, and then I messed up so much after they demoted me the second time when I was the last time I was a corporal. They were like, man, he messed up so bad, we're just going to promote him so this doesn't happen again, and somehow I ended up a sergeant.
So screw up, move up? Is that what happened?
Pretty much. I know you're going to be shocked. We've been on and off podcast together, but sometimes I say my opinion when maybe it should be better kept in my inside voice.
I am shocked to hear that, JR. I do not.
I've never seen you do that. I've been on this
show.
I've been on here like 5 times now. Yeah.
So I want you to know it only took me 4 times to learn that when officers wanted your opinion, they don't actually want your opinion. They want their opinion repeated back to them. Oops.
Exactly.
So
it take you to learn that.
I'm gonna have to take offense at that comment there. Thank you.
Yeah.
Only a couple times. So the next part of the introduction, dear listener, dear viewer at home, is how we first met them. So I actually met all these guys at a meeting that never happened for an organization that doesn't exist, and there's no proof.
Perfect.
So the first rule of Spec 4 Mafia, there is no Spec 4 Mafia, right?
Mafia.
Of course not.
Yeah.
It's all a rumor.
We made all this up. None of us would ever talk about a real Spec 4 Mafia. They don't exist.
All right. So Keith and Michael, you don't answer these two questions, or the religion question, because you've answered them before, but Andrew and Dan have to because they never have. All right, are you ready for this, Dan?
Go for it.
So, Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
Between the three, Firefly.
Okay. And what's it about Firefly that does it for you?
Less complicated lore, simpler universe. It is a story that speaks more to me in that it was originally intended as a retelling of the westward journey of the defeated Confederate Army. Now, I myself am of mixed ancestry, Yankee and Confederate. Actually, my only truly documented Civil War veteran ancestor I could find was in the New York Regiment. But given how many Virginians I had in the American Revolution, I'm sure I at least had collateral ancestry in the that side of the unpleasantness. And then my first two units were old Mississippi regiments. The Old Miss Army ROTC Battalion claims ancestry from ACO, the 11th Mississippi, while I was in the 114th Field Artillery in the Guard, which is the old 1st Mississippi Heavy. So there's a little bit of the Lost Cause romantic in me, and a good bit of the Malcolm Reynolds seen a little too much, and sometimes I just have an urge to wander.
I can appreciate that. As a Virginian, we salute your ancestors. Although
I am an ex-Marylander. I'm in Tennessee these days.
We're in Tennessee, dude.
Clarksville, right outside the South Gates of Campbell.
All right, that's where my son's stationed. He's deployed to Texas right now, but that's where he's stationed.
If he needs anything from range control, have him give me a call.
I'll do it, man. Thanks.
Outstanding. Making connections. All right. And Andrew.
It's what it's for.
Star Wars.
You may change your mind because he's an MP, and JR always gives me crap about that.
MPs make great range customers.
All right, Andrew, Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
I'm going to split my answer. So I saw Star Wars in the theater, 7 years old. It was a seminal event in my life, one that'll never leave me as far as the awe of just seeing that spectacle. However, I do believe that Captain Kirk is one of my spirit animals. So I lean very heavily towards Star Trek. And when I say Star Trek, it's mostly the original series. Just something about that, how progressive it was in its thought, how it made you think about complex issues from different perspectives, different angles, especially for what it did at the time. So the kid in me is going to jump full-heartedly into Star Wars. The more, thoughtful adult in me leans more towards Star Trek.
I don't know. When someone says they've got Captain Kirk in them, I'm assuming they're the wandering rakes who, a lady in every port, because that was also his reputation.
I'm happily married now, so anything that happened before that, we will not be speaking of.
Funny thing about that, everybody in fandom claims that, that William Shatner's this insufferable asshole. The one time I met him, he was as nice and as friendly and chatty as you could ask for. Partly because I'd contributed to a writing project he was looking for input for.
Oh, cool.
He was looking for short pieces. How did Star Trek and his work affect your life? And I'd written a short piece called Evolution of a Command Style. And Shatner's use of really dry humor in, as a command tool was something that I really did steal over the years. And I told him that, and man, I didn't think Shatner was going to shut up. I was at the back end of the autograph line. I'm like, man, this is great. I got my $80 worth on that one.
A friend of mine ran into him at a University of Kentucky basketball game. He was going to the concession line, and here comes Shatner. He's got like 2 or 3 hot dogs, a couple of beers. He's just loaded down. Yeah. And, he's like, Mr. Shatner. And he's like, hey, how you doing, kid? Trying to watch the game. He said, that's fine, but I'm going with you. He followed him back to his seat, and he let him. He sat with him for the rest of the game, and he was just the nicest dude ever. So, yeah, I don't know where the stories come from, but
because a lot of times he is an insufferable prick. But on the other hand, if I should live that long, I plan on being an insufferable prick if I'm 90-something.
Well, is he really, or is it just to other people in Hollywood? Because if it's just to Hollywooders, like they have it coming.
They got a lot of people in fandom claim he's awful to deal with.
But I did run into him at a con, and he was super nice. But
yeah,
I think the experience of the ball game, I think, speaks volumes to who he really is, and not just the persona.
I knew somebody used to run into him at horse events when he still had the place in Kentucky too. So
yeah, he did a lot of horse stuff, and I actually enjoyed his writing. I don't know if he got a ghost to write it for him or not, but Tech War was a great series, and
it was a good premise. Particularly for the time.
All right, and getting us back on track, because we're polytheistic here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Dan, Game of Thrones, The Wheel of Time, or Chronicles of Narnia?
Oh God. Well, I've never actually read a single Wheel of Time novel, so that's right out. Game of Thrones has its moments. An ex-girlfriend of mine says I am a lot like the Hound. But I don't know. Chronicles of Narnia is just such a foundational text, even if it's just dripping with Christian allegory because of C.S. Lewis himself. I don't know. I'm going to have to go with Game of Thrones no matter how much I dislike Martin personally.
All right. And Andrew, same question.
Yeah, with those three options, Game of Thrones wins hands down.
Okay. All right. And Dan, one of the crying shames of adulthood is they stop asking these questions. So we're bringing it back and making it cool again. But what's your favorite dinosaur?
Brontosaurus.
Excellent choice. What about you, Andrew?
Oh, far and away, T-Rex. Quick little story. There was a Jurassic Park exhibit that goes around the country, and I took our kids to it a few months ago in Atlanta, and you're supposed to go to Isla Nublar, and you get to see different things, and it's mostly from the Jurassic World, and you get to the end, and they go, okay, we're going to sit here for the gates and wait for the shuttlecraft to come and bring you back to the mainland, and there was no T-Rex. And I'm sitting there thinking there's got to be, and we're next to this like 8-foot-tall chain link fence, and the front of it is wide open, and the one side's got the privacy, slats and everything. I'm like, there's got to be something coming from behind there. And sure enough, red lights start strobing, and sirens are going off, and the people who are, your guides are freaking out. We got containment, leak, breaking containment, and this, I don't know how tall it was. It was big, animatronic, looked awesome. T-Rex comes out, scared the heck out of my kids. It was awesome. So any love I have for T-Rex was tripled at that moment.
Nice. Excellent story. And if you had your hunting rifle, you could have taken it out. All right.
It would take quite a rifle.
Probably an elephant gun would do it.
Anzio Arms 20 millimeter cannon would probably do nicely.
Cannon would take out a lot of things.
Yeah.
I need that just for reasons.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But when you fire it, you have to scream tally ho as the founders intended.
Of course.
Exactly. That's fair.
Can you get a non-nuke round for a Crockett?
Yeah.
No. Yeah, training rounds.
All right.
No, all a Crockett was a standard 106, was a specialty round for a 106 recoilless.
Yeah.
And because we are civilized human beings here at the Blaster and Blades podcast, we are no longer knuckle-dragging troglodytes. Coffee or tea, and how do you take it? Dan?
Neither.
What? What's your caffeine of choice?
Mountain Dew.
How did you survive that long in the Army without having coffee?
Somehow I dealt with it. I usually had access to a soda supply.
All right. You can bring this one home and save it for us, Andrew.
Coffee all day, every day, black.
Outstanding.
My man.
This is the way. The only thing I can't do with coffee is instant. It just gives me flashbacks. I don't know about you guys, but when we were over there, they had us running so many missions. We were so exhausted all the time that we would do the instant Folgers that comes in the MRE under your gums, like dip.
Yeah, I used to do that. I did that in Ranger School, and there was a time when no dip was allowed. And the number of times I got smoked for quote unquote dipping until I, had to pull it out and go, "This is coffee," and there was the coffee ground, just like you're talking about.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's gross, but it works.
It does.
Everyone asks when they want to ask you all the war questions what the scariest moment is in Iraq. They're always disappointed when I tell them that when I woke up in the TC seat and I realized my driver and gunner were asleep too as we were driving down the highway.
Yeah, that's about right.
Because we were so exhausted.
Okay, so here you go.
Completely realistic.
we had that happen to the truck in front of us. The problem with that was that truck had a pallet of 3 Hawk missiles on the back.
Ooh.
And he went over the edge of the berm and flipped the pallet of missiles. You're talking 3 missiles just got flipped right in front of me. Each one has a 2-kilometer kill radius if it blows. Okay. So, yeah, we all had to change our shorts. And then we got about 20 kilometers away from the site when EOD blew those damn things up. And they lit up the entire horizon when they went.
Yeah.
It was the 4th of July times 100. It was awesome. But those missiles scare the crap out of me.
That would do it.
I forgot we still had Hawks in 91.
Yeah, they were just about to retire. They hooked us up with a Patriot unit. It was 843 Patriot. We were 652 Hawk. And they called us Task Force 843. We gave the 2nd ACR air coverage as they moved in, and then they would set up, and then they would break down, and we give them air coverage, and then they'd set back up and give us air coverage while we moved. Did that all the way through.
We
I
had
like the Hawk though, man. Leaves the launcher at Mach 2.
We had D battery of 554 Patriot with us at TAA Thunder in 03, and they were the ones who popped the scud that was coming our way.
Good deal.
That was a very interesting experience.
And they still don't acknowledge that any of those warheads might have had anything unpleasant on top of them. Officially.
Who knows?
So.
Intel's a little spotty. Sorry.
Yep. So I don't want the Uncle Sam to come after us, so we're just going to move right on because I don't know what the official stance is on some of this stuff. And,
Man, I could tell horror stories about the DoD review process on my first 2 novels.
Oh, God.
I don't want to.
You're going to get called up in front of Congress like Clancy? Is that what's going to happen here?
I would do it for the sake of the advertising.
Oh, yeah.
You can't buy publicity like
can't.
that. And I don't get me wrong, not to speak too much ill of the dead. I met Tom Clancy twice, and he was a dick. Oh, my God.
Ouch.
Not fond of that man at all. I know the comparisons are inevitable because we're both ex-Marylanders with terrible eyesight, but Jesus. Tom Clancy was an asshole.
Is there anyone you do like?
Oh, there's tons of people I like. Jack Higgins, perfect gentleman. Dick Marcinko from Team 6 went to the signing for his second book. A lot of people have horrible Marcinko stories. Again, great guy. Really set a standard on how to deal with fans' autograph tables. Oh God, I've met most of the Battlestar Galactica cast. They're all really nice people.
Old
Even
new?
New,
Okay.
old. Several of them are dead, but I mean,
Fair.
I knew Richard Hatch pretty well from Dragon Con every year.
Yeah.
You know, he's the only guy. Richard's wake and the memorial shot every year that we do at the Fleet Party is the only time I drink Fireball. I hate the stuff. Richard drank Fireball, so that's what the memorial shot is.
What fleet?
13th. It was the Colonial Fleet. Then when we had a change in management of the fan group, we renamed it the 13th Fleet. BSG costuming group with a drinking problem.
Okay.
Or a drinking group with a BSG costuming problem. Could go either way.
It's a toss-up. Speaking of drinking problems, so what is the story behind, Keith, you and your press, Henchman Press, deciding, you know what, we're going to do this E4 Mafia story and break the unwritten code that you don't talk about E4 Mafia?
So, to borrow a line from Dan's story in this anthology, it seemed like a good idea at the time. So a couple of years ago, I was like, go looking around, and it's like, there is not a collection or anything with E4 Mafia stories in it, really.
And there should have been.
There should have been. So since there was a lack of those, and I had an idea, I decided this was a good idea, and I reached out to a friend of mine who owns Henchman Press, Leo, and went, Leo, hey, there are no E4 Mafia anthologies out there. I think that needs to be fixed. And he goes, so what are you proposing? And I went, I'll do the editing and the story selection. You handle the publishing, cover, all that. And he's like, deal. And I went, Great. And thus started the process of finding people to write these stories. So I posted in all the usual places, you know, the online writing groups, places where Mill Sci-Fi folks hang out, going, I just need stories.
That took a while.
Oh, it took a good long while. And Leo, turns out Leo had never done an anthology before. This is my first thing I've done editing for. So thank you guys. These guys have been great. I have stories about every one of their stories. Oh, Lord. But yeah, as these stories start coming in, it's just like, I got very fortunate. I didn't have any bad stories come in. Had a couple of authors who had to pull their stories for various reasons because they were like, yeah, I can't let that out. But no bad stories. Had a couple of them. I think I reached out to everybody on here about some kind of a little bit of editorial work, but everyone sent me good stories. They were in the vein. They nailed the mark for E4 Mafia stuff. And through time, Leo and I figured out this whole process as we were going. We were literally kind of building the airplane as we flew. And here we are. And now I get to talk to Andrew for the first time. And Andrew, I have so many questions when I got your story. So Andrew's story is titled Burping the Worm.
I threw them at me because I want to hear them.
Oh, no. I'm over here reading this thing, and this is less critique because he wrote an amazing story. And if you read Burping the Worm, anybody who reads it's going to be like, oh my God, that's a great story. That's horrible what you had that dude doing, Andrew.
It's based on a Spec 4 of mine who did that. So,
and it was literally...
I knew it was based on somebody real.
I don't think any of the stories I got didn't have at least a couple of people based on somebody real. I'm really, at least loosely. But yeah, I was reading Andrew's and it was like, because his got to me fairly early on in this whole thing. And I'm reading it and it's like, hey, Leo, there's some subject matter in this one. It's an amazing story. And he's like, okay, how bad? Okay, we're publishing it. All right, cool. And for the record, yes, Mike, I have a story in the anthology. Leo actually selected it and did the edits on it.
So you weren't like the FBI investigating itself.
No, I'm not the FBI investigating myself. We played that one straight. I was trying to get Leo to send me a story, but he was busy. So,
do you think you're going to do a second volume?
Leo's asking me if I have ideas for a second one. I think we can probably, if I can get some of the crew together to come up with some new stories and maybe get a few different writers in, we could probably do a second anthology of this.
I know the reviewers are screaming for one already. I mean,
just
about every review I've read on the anthology is like, we need more of these.
We want another one?
We only have 7 ratings.
Yeah, but
most
3
of them are asking for a second volume.
Okay, fair.
And I want more of your story, Dan, because that was I'm the company commander of a bunch of permanent E4s. Oh my God, that was so intriguing. You did a great job with that.
I had to come up with something different, and I will tell you why. I did not read the solicitation very carefully, and I wrote an honest to God based on events that happened in 2007 E4 Mafia story, in which somebody who will remain nameless because the narrator had nothing to do with me went ahead and actually killed our battalion sergeant major, who we were planning on having killed anyway.
Wow.
This story was
problematic.
This story was extremely grim and extremely dark,
for the
and extremely realistic.
In Minecraft.
Oh no! We didn't get that. Vernon Waller is still alive and running around. The last I saw him, I saw him at Fort Polk 2 years after I got it. No, I ran into him at Fort Polk 2 years after I got out, and he was not happy to see me.
I can't imagine why.
Well, here's the thing. I mentioned to somebody else who was in the unit at the time, I'm like, I thought Waller and I parted on better terms than that. And he said, you know why you got left on the rear D in 07, 08, right? I said, why? not counting the fact that I was, on the list for another operation, and my wife's my wife at the time's medical issues and everything else. I'm like, and I specifically used that line in this version of the story. I'm not saying I agree with the decision to leave me back covering 3 people's jobs on the rear detachment roster to free up 3 more people to go forward, but I understand it. And he said, "No, man. Word was the officers had already taken up a collection to have Waller killed as soon as we got to theater, and rumor was you'd accepted the job."
Ouch.
And I thought about it I did have a certain reputation in those days.
Fair.
And I thought about it for a second, and I said, I'll say this. Anyone you could pay me to kill, I'd probably do for free.
No crimes were actually committed in the viewing, recording, or discussing of this novel.
No, that story was completely legit. So anyway, I wrote this story and I was extremely proud of it. Then with about a week to go, I'm looking at the solicitation page again, and I'd missed the part where it said military sci-fi or military fantasy. And I said, fuck, and I threw that my empty Mountain Dew can across the room. Thought about it. I'm like, okay, I got to shit something else really quickly. And I did. And I thought about it for a second. I'm like, what would happen if you took an Imperial Space Marine dreadnought from 40K and you stripped away all of the angry space Catholic garbage of 40K? The dreadnought is no longer honored ancestor this or wandering ancient that. Instead, it's piloted by the software ghost of an E4 who hasn't been drunk or laid in 400 years.
And your
hence the story Forever Young. Hence that gave me a title, Forever Young. And then I just rocked on from there. And then Keith looks at this. He said, "You can write more of this, right?" When I sat down, I'm like, okay, this batshit insane empire of mine, which is loosely based on the way our future could go, about plus 2,000 years. It needs an emperor. Better yet, an empress. Hey, what would happen if the emperor dropped dead and his second wife / ex side piece took over as the imperial regent? I got a buddy of mine, Amber Strausser, used to be a Dallas Cowboys cheerleader. I met Amber carrying their bags on their Christmas tour in Korea in '99. I'm still friends with several of the ladies from the '99 Korea tour, including Amber, who's still professionally performing in Vegas. She's a choreographer for the Prince Tribute show at the Hard Rock. And smoking hot redhead, doesn't look 40. I thought I could work with this. I'm like, hey, Amber, you want to be Empress of the Known Universe? And she said, hell yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, it strokes my ego. I'm like, okay, we'll rock with this. So I've got another little short story in that universe called The Texas Rattlesnake. And, but yeah, I could. And then I'm sitting here thinking, man, I could shit an entire novel in this universe if I had to. I mean,
I might know a publisher.
I've got to write another Athenaeum Incorporated novel for canon. Actually, I've got to write 2 more because we split book 2 to keep it a reasonable length. So book 2.5 is now book 3. Book 3 is now 4, and everything else shoves down the line there. I turned in a short story for the Flames of Retribution anthology, which I think was 3 Ravens.
It was.
Yeah, okay. That one I turned in. I had a lot of fun writing that one. And so I've got tons of crap I have to write, but I still want to write more with this messed up future Terran Empire. So yeah, if we do another E4 Mafia story, you'll see another story about Delta Company again.
All right, cool, because I would love to see more of that.
And then, if you don't mind me pimping that universe out to somebody else, I think it's Raconteur's looking to do Pogue 1.
Oh, yeah, I saw that one.
I could write a short story about the Ironside support unit.
Do it.
Cool.
It's like
okay. My setting now has short stories from 3 different publishers.
You're as big a slut as I am. I like that.
horrible about this. Well, okay.
Okay, cool.
I didn't have a choice with Amarillo by Firefight when Tony Weisskopf says, I want a story about your sentient tank. You shut the hell up and do this.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
I have a great Tony Weisskopf story. Actually, I have a couple of great Tony Weisskopf stories.
But, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Dan gets this story in Forever Young, and it's just like, oh my God, they're permanently E4 Mafia. They don't even know how not to be E4 Mafia. That's hilarious.
They can't be anything other than what they are.
Andrew, you nailed that. You nailed this layout for this so well. And Michael, do you want to talk about your story? I'm handing that off to you. Here you go, T-Dub. Have fun with it.
Yeah. The story concept.
Hold on, Michael.
Yeah.
Before you start, we're at the half-hour mark, and since I'm listing the anthology as a sponsor, and I know you do radio voices, I want you to read in your funniest voice the back matter. I'm putting you on the spot. No time to prep.
What am I reading?
The anthology ad copy.
The back cover.
You sent me the back cover picture. You got it.
Hang on. I got to find it. I mean, geez.
No pressure.
No pressure at all. Jeez,
Hell, I can find it, maybe.
I didn't want him to have time to get ready. I like surprising Mike because his reactions are always so hilarious.
Great, thanks, asshole. Anyway,
Oh God.
now I'm gonna have to.
A group of vets being assholes to each other? Never.
Never happened.
happened.
Ben, you should have been here for the G.I. Joe panel. That was a trip.
Dude, Larry Hama is like one of my personal friggin' heroes.
All right, I got it. They are specialists, corporals, and petty officers. They are the military personnel who have learned some leadership and gained expertise in their specialty. Work smarter, not harder, is their watch phrase, followed by, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. They are masters of avoiding work, getting up to shenanigans, and when a mission needs to be completed or a job done, it's an E4 that others turn to. They are the near mythical E4 Mafia, and their ability to avoid work, solve problems, and create trouble is the stuff of legend. Here are 11 stories of the E4 Mafia in a variety of settings and situations that are sure to thrill and entertain anyone with an interest in military fiction, science fiction, a sense of humor, and the curiosity to peek under the rug to see what got swept there when something needed done.
All right, outstanding. Woohoo!
Well done. Well done.
Well done.
Recovering
Nicely done.
DJ, ex-voice actor. Okay.
Are you going to do the audiobook for this one?
Hey, I'll do it if they want me to.
Michael, I'll talk to Leo about that and see if we can get that set up.
Now I got a reason to buy a new mic. Awesome. Okay.
There you go.
That's right up, buddy.
That's right. Hey, the story that I did was originally done as an intro to a novel. I had the idea of what if my particular air defense artillery, now space defense artillery unit, maintenance platoon, what would it be like if we got stuck, crash landed on a planet held by the bad guys, and we use our expertise and, we know how to fix stuff. So that automatically means we know how to break stuff just as easy. And
Right.
So the whole concept was they're going to get crash landed on this planet and spend the entire series just completely screwing up the bad guys' stuff whenever and wherever they can until they're picked
Legit.
up. And so I wanted to introduce the maintenance platoon characters in the opening scene, and that's where that story came from. LeGrand, Stone, Barton, except for Stone, all of these people are based on people that I served with in my unit, especially Barton and LeGrand and Porter and the Drip God Almighty himself.
Did everybody serve with a guy named Stone?
Yeah, that's
I
why I
swear
chose that
to
name.
rule. I got a Stone in mine too. He was my squad leader, then he was my platoon sergeant, then he PCSD retired as a sergeant major. But that's where I got the idea of, he was a senior E4 who snuck it. He was a senior NCO who snuck into the project.
Yeah, and that the whole idea of creative procurement was something that we specialized in Hawk. the whole idea of walking behind, you know, I think it was Keith in the forward. Didn't you mention something about, oh, wow, we don't have the tools we need for the inspection? Oh, Alpha does. Yeah. That's a neat idea.
Yeah.
We did stuff like that all the time.
Oh,
The Marines actually codified an expression for that. My squad leader when I deployed was a former Marine. He had gotten out of the Marine Corps and went into the Guard because they promised him he'd be home more for his kid. 3 days after he's deployed again, and he's like, well, crap, if I'd have known I was going over, I'd have stayed with the Marines. But Hernandez had this line that the Marines have: gear adrift is a gift. If you find it, it's yours.
I originally tried to join the Marine Corps, and they told me they had a height requirement, and I didn't meet it because I'm only 5'6.5". 4 years in the Army, they never gave me that half inch, so I was 5'6".
Yeah.
And so then I meet Sergeant Garcia, who is a former Marine, prior service Marine, now serving in Air Defense Artillery Army as a sergeant. And I was like, Sergeant Garcia, how'd you get to be a Marine? You're shorter than me. He goes, what are you talking about, LaVoice? I said, they told me they had a height requirement. Ah, LaVoice, you're so stupid, man. That's only for the Coast Guard. So, like, okay. Well, I got lied to by a recruiter. Big shock.
A recruiter.
All right, so your story. So they're just, kicking up dust and making waves.
Well, not in this story. In this story, it's basically just a creative procurement thing. They're in desperate need of certain pieces of equipment for an upcoming exercise. I kind of translated Hohenfels from Germany into space, and even called it Hohenfels still, just in honor of
that. I so caught that. so bad.
I figure anybody that had been there would have automatically cringed when they read it, especially if they thought about area mud. But the whole thing was they needed this stuff, and the supply people weren't cooperating. So how do you follow military protocol and rules and still be annoying enough to get what you wanted? And that was the whole crux of the story. I had one person that read it tell me that it was a little too realistic because my characters became such a pain in that guy's rear that it reminded her of other people she actually knew. So I guess I did okay.
That's good.
I don't know, but it was fun to write.
That's for me, man.
And I've got plans. I actually do want to do a series with these characters, so it was kind of a nice way to get them introed and kind of punch them out a little bit.
Yay!
I dig it.
Cool.
All right, and Andrew, what was your story? What was the story of your story, I should say?
So the story of my story is, like I said, as the last 2 years in the Army, I felt like Milton Wadhams from Office Space, where they kept moving my desk and stopped paying me and hoped that I would just go away. So it was actually gave me a good head start on that transition after a career in the Army to figure out what I was going to do afterwards. And I've always wanted to write. I have a master's in English Lit, and the Army kind of beat my creativity out of me for a while. And my children brought it back, bedtime being Daddy tell us a story and things like that. So I knew I wanted to get back to writing, and as a new writer, getting feedback is almost impossible. So, my idea was that I wanted to write a novel, but sitting there plugging away, in my office by myself, who the hell knows if it's any good? And my mom's always going to tell me stuff's good, and my wife's going to tell me, I should put a comma here and a period there. But so I thought I should do some short stories, and when Facebook this popped up on one of the Facebook sites as far as a call for short stories, I thought it was a good opportunity. All I was looking for is to get just feedback. Never in a million years thought it would get accepted and put in an anthology. And I did this concurrently with a horror short story writing competition where they were looking for an online site that publishes holiday-themed anthologies, horror anthologies. And this was they were doing one for Halloween, of course. So I wrote 2 short stories, 1 horror, this one, and set them off. Again, not expecting to hear anything. And it was like, hitting the jackpot. In the same week, I got told the horror story was getting published. And then I heard back from Keith, and he's like, hey, like the story, we want to put it. Got a couple editorial suggestions. I was like, hell yeah. What do you want me to do?
Were my suggestions good?
Well, I think I listened to all of them, so yeah.
Well, fair enough.
And pardon me again, I said I'm outside, so the motorcycle just went by. So that was good because it was someone other than myself thinking that my stuff actually, didn't suck. So that's kind of the story behind that, and then working with Keith and Leo to polish it up and get it where it needed to be to get published. And at the time, I thought, like I said, my last couple of years in the Army really soured me a lot on the Army itself. I won't go into details, and I won't say any names and protect the guilty.
I understand.
Bad command climate, things like that. So
in the Army, I am shocked. I say.
I know. Can you imagine that? It's crazy. So I was actually going to write urban fantasy, and Keith, one of his comments to me, which was awesome, and as a writer who hasn't had any feedback yet, trying to get some confidence, he said, "Hey, this is good. If you can expand this into a novel, I know publishers who'd be interested." So I immediately stopped everything I was doing with the urban fantasy and went, I really didn't want to be the ex-military guy who wrote military sci-fi or fantasy.
There's a lot of us.
I'm now the ex-military guy writing military sci-fi based on those comments. And so the character of Combat Jax, he's changed quite a bit, but that world is now expanded, and I'm currently probably about 40% through the first round of edits on Combat Jax, the novel. So that's the story behind the story that's in the anthology.
Oh, cool.
And then,
so happy to hear that, man.
There is a guy, thank you. There is a guy that it was based on, the Burping the Worm and Combat Jax. If those who don't know what those mean, go look them up on Urban Dictionary. But that is based on my gunner in Korea. And I was a Bradley platoon leader.
And now you all know why I'm like, okay, is Leo going to freak out with this one? Let me check with him.
Well, when I saw that it was something respect for Mafia, I've worked with amazing. 24 years, I've had amazing spec force, and as the token officer in the group, I got to say that the myth is true. When you need something done, you need the hard job done, especially as an officer. If I need it done with plausible deniability, I've been fortunate to have some amazing spec force who got that shit done, and so the story came out relatively easy because, like I said, I have a wealth of guys that I could choose from to write some stories about.
Oh,
nice!
Wow. So I actually wasn't familiar with the term "burping the worm," but I did a quick Google, and interesting.
Hopefully, not an image.
I wasn't either. I needed a title. So I looked up for euphemisms for the actions of the book. And
so JR, do you now see where my dilemma was? Is I've never edited anything. This is my first time out, and oh hell yeah, I'm going straight to the publisher. Going, Leo, will you even touch this?
It fits actually. You'll get a kick out of this, Andrew. We were the mission where I met my co-host Nick because we called in air support. Helicopters showed up, decided they couldn't tell where the Army was, even though it was pretty obvious where the good guys and bad guys were. So they pieced out and left us on our own. The mission where we called Nick's sniper team in to get us out of an ambush. When the ambush happened, there's a Het convoy and then us and then another Het convoy. And Het convoys can't back up. And so they take out perfect T ambush or L-shaped ambush, right? So they take out the lead and the rear hets on the two different convoys with us stuck in the middle. So we're trying to back the white trucks, the civilian trucks up with the civilian drivers, and I get called over. And this one driver is, shall we say, burping the worm because he wanted a little bit more self-love before he met Allah. Because he's from one of the countries. And I had to write that because he ended up living in, like, if it's combat loss, they don't pay for it. If it's personal negligence, the company billed them for the damage to the vehicles. So I'm trying to write it up reasonably so as combat loss. So I'm writing like he was motivating himself in an up-down maneuver with his, whatever. I ended up talking to the battalion commander because I was trying to write clinically that act in an actual incident report. Nobody wanted to sign off on it because, obvious reasons. They were like, no, this is going next person. So I ended up getting to meet the battalion commander. Not someone you want to meet as a junior sergeant.
No, I can imagine. Yeah,
But how long were you a junior sergeant after you met him?
So I wasn't actually in trouble. They just wanted to make sure that I was saying what they thought I was saying because they all thought it was hilarious. But I did. So they had a policy in 2005 where You were supposed to do the speed limit of 55 miles an hour in a combat zone, which goes against all known doctrine for convoy operations and protecting those. You take the speed of the fast or the slowest vehicle as the top speed, and then you're intermittent, so you're not a predictable target. And so when they instituted the speeding rule and they were going to enforce it with helicopters armed with radar guns instead of actual guns to shoot the bad guys, they asked me what I thought of it, and I didn't know the battalion commander had created that policy because he'd been enlisted. So I'm like, there's no way he wrote something this dumb. So I told him we should probably castrate whoever came up with this idea. And then he gave me the privilege after this of file 13 my own E6 packet. He was so nice.
Ow. Yeah.
I guess if I had to write the E4 Mafia story, I'd probably be incriminating myself. So maybe it's a good thing I didn't submit.
We could have file brushed off all the names. It'd have been fine.
Yep.
There were a couple of stories that came in, and I'm like, I am really sure this was a real event. These are real people.
This is way too specific to be hypothetical.
And it's like, and then I went back through the contract because Leo and I had to modify his standard contract for an anthology, and it's like, oh no. If they did use real people, that's not on us. That's on them. Good. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, in my story, all those interactions.
First Sergeant Helms wouldn't mind.
All the interactions with the female soldiers, those were based on real people too, because Hawk was one of the first combat arms to go co-ed, and so there were multiple problems with females in especially hawkers and MPs, because we had MPs for security, and like half of those were female too.
Engineers were combat heavy and everything less 12 Bravo than 12 Bravo. Had females early on, except the problem was nobody ever had enough 12 Bravos, so they stuck the combat heavy units out there as 12 Bravos or build roads in the worst places possible. So same thing there. We had there were stories.
And we could probably fill dozens upon dozens of hours of stories like that we all experienced.
Even amongst ourselves, yeah.
Yeah. So we've talked about the three that are here. Keith, what about your story?
Okay, my story, I wanted to write something in my cyberpunk setting, but I wanted to do characters that weren't the normal characters I've been writing about. No Phoebe the Tank, no Burning Bad Carmine. I wanted to do something different. So I went, okay, so the U.S. is kind of 5 different countries now. So let's go to Utah.
That was a good one.
We'll have a combat-heavy engineer unit that inexplicably the Holy Mexican Empire, and that should catch people right there, is rolling 2 companies of mech infantry up toward this draw where they're at, and they were just about to leave, but they ain't got anything that's going to outrun an M113, not when they're loaded down. So they look at Corporal Major, who's very loosely based on a soldier I knew, and can you and your crew do anything about that? And she's like, okay, give me access to everything, all the intel, because it's cyberpunk, so it's just feed me the data, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, yeah, I think I got a plan. And they're like, okay, so what do you think the platoon needs to do? Because we can't get away from these guys, and and if we stay here, it's just die in place. And she's like, no, take the rest of the platoon. I'm just taking my team. And they're like, why? Well, Gordon stole a APC full of explosives, stole enough ammo to make a Barrett 50 cal worth keeping. So the premise in my story was an E4 Mafia team that literally will steal anything, and you absolutely do not want to be the work that has just been identified as needing to be finished. For those who've seen the Fat Electrician E4 Mafia video, anybody?
Yeah.
Yeah, the one where he goes, you do not want to be the work they've been assigned. The Holy Mexican Empire companies were the work they were assigned, and these characters violated every bit of rules, regulations, securities, comm standards. No. I'm using other people's comm signals.
The Geneva checklists.
What was the Canadians' motto in World War II? It's only a war crime after the first time.
It's not a war crime the first time is the expression.
There you go. It's not a war crime the first time. There we go.
because literally I'm writing cyberpunk military science fiction. Yeah, one of the characters had to catch one. That was terrible. I felt bad about that. But so hopefully you guys did everybody read the other stories?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool. Because
I read the whole damn thing.
Yeah, man, I thoroughly enjoyed them. In fact, I'm going through them again.
Yeah, I have read all of those stories at least twice.
I think Gage Mosher wrote the best one in the book, to be honest.
There's a reason I used his stories to close out the anthology.
Yeah.
Because it was just, oh my God. Gage wrote a story called The Mafia is Eternal. And it takes place when a sailor's ship blows up, nuclear plant goes critical in a combat situation, and then he wakes up in heaven.
It's a good one.
So you get E4 Mafia from the Romans, a World War II vet, Marine, and this sailor. I mean, guy.
And the Archangel. Don't forget the Archangel.
Yeah.
Were they all Army stories, or were some of them E4s and other? Because like they have that like
a lot of Marines.
We had a lot of Marines. We had some Navy. We had a lot of Army and Navy. Ray Daly had I'm assuming he was basing on British Navy, because this guy was like an E4 in the British Navy and ends up on a ship. And sadly, Ray Daly has passed away, but the story he sent was named Missing Man Formation. And
Ironic.
it's just oh, dude, I've had so much with that. And if anybody out there does know Ray Daly's family, please get them in touch with me.
Yeah, I don't know.
Please.
That was the title of my Substack where I wrote about the anthology, was Missing Man Formation.
Yeah.
I wanted to write about Ray. Because it was a great story.
It was
made even more poignant by the fact that he's no longer with us.
Yeah, and there were a couple of them where it's not even these characters in combat. It's like Ray's character is never in combat. He's just going day to day trying to deal with this ship and everything going on around him, and people are assuming he's this other person. And he's just like, I'm just going to let him think that and keep going. Because he knows
the least resistance, man.
Yeah,
the E4 way.
Yeah. Okay, you think I'm not? Oh, you're not listening? Great. Okay, I'm just going to move on with my day.
Yeah, Michael and I have talked about the most E4 thing we've seen in sci-fi was the scene on Michael. You and I were talking about that scene on the Death Star where the two guards totally adrill because they don't want to be involved, and they turn around quickly and go the other direction.
Yeah, they're just like talking about, did you see that thing about the new T-60? Oh, yeah, some of the other guys were talking about that. It was kind of cool.
Or the two speeder bike guys in The Mandalorian.
Oh, those guys were great.
Oh, yeah.
Nah, I'm out.
Second
I want to see it.
Moment in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Well, okay, let's be fair. There's only one war movie in all of Star Wars.
Well, okay, go on.
Rogue One.
Okay, all right. I figured that's where you were going, but I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, that's the only.
Rogue One's kind of a ripoff of the Guns of Navarone in its own way.
In its own way, you're not wrong. Yeah,
they did a good job with it, and I was okay with it.
It's probably the best standalone movie in the franchise.
It's the only reason I watched Andor was because of that.
The funniest breakdown of the Rogue One is the angry staff officers have their podcast. They are hilarious. Like, they live up to their name. I'm just gonna say on some of their rants, it is hilarious.
I think I know a couple of those guys.
Hang on a second.
I don't think they're still in, but they do funny stuff.
Hang on, I'll be right back, guys.
So, Michael, since you've read some of them too, what was your favorite other than your own of the ones for authors not here?
Of course, it's my own. No, I really dug Forever Young. Thank
you.
I love that concept, man, because I'm an Anne McCaffrey fan, and Elizabeth Moon and David Weber and a bunch of authors from the past have all done the whole sentient starship kind of a thing, and this was like right in line with those. With
the Ironsides, there's some argument as to how sentient they really are.
Yeah, and I got that. But
you don't know, are they really good software copies? Are they really alive? Nobody knows. They certainly don't know, and they certainly don't care.
there was a little bit of a vibe from like, okay, there was a series by John DeChancy and it has nothing to do with the military.
That name rings a
But
bell, though.
It was called Star Rigger, and it was about truckers in space. Some alien civilization had connected multiple planets with these gateways, and you could haul freight across the known universe by going through these gateways. The main character had an AI that ran his truck that was loosely based on the personality of his dead father. And I was kind of like, yeah, this is kind of like that, but you know, it's different. It's cool. I love it. That was great. The whole concept.
I just needed a concept really quickly, so I'm like, let me dump the 40K dreadnought lore on its head and see what happens.
See what falls out.
Pretty much, because I'm an enormous 40K nerd.
Oh, I haven't got. I'm a BattleTech nerd from way back.
So am I. And also, there's a good bit of the battle mech in the Ironside design, which is why I made that crack about a particularly litigious game company.
Yeah, I thought about that. I was like, is he referencing? He's not referencing that.
I could be referencing. Well, I would be referencing FASA, but they don't exist anymore. So
No,
it could be. I could be throwing shade at WizKids. I could be throwing shade at Catalyst, or I could be throwing shade, shade on Games Workshop. Take your pick.
Or what about the Harmony people? That
fuck those. Fuck them too.
Andrew, what was your favorite of the ones that obviously not your own, but and preferably if it's one we haven't talked about some of the other authors?
Well, the fact that he's not here, I can mention that I enjoy Keith, so it won't sound like I'm.
Oh, there he is. He's back.
I'm back.
I said nothing.
Wait, Summercorn's story about the was it Summercorn who wrote the one about the helmet?
Yeah, Summercorn.
That was brilliant.
Honest to God, everybody kind of nailed the assignment with this, but Summercorn is like, I'm going to hit every E4 Mafia trope there is.
Exactly. He really did.
Start to finish.
I mean, I'm on. When people ask me about the anthology, I tell them the truth. I'm like, I am no better than third in this book. Summercorn and Mosier got me beaten.
Yeah. Josh Hill's, and he was supposed to be here tonight, but Josh Hill's Hardcore, that is one of those. Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that those soldier friends who were like that, and it was just like, yeah, that totally worked.
Yeah,
his was rock solid. I got Barb and Gail Sanders, and they were the only author paired us two authors on a story. It came in really late, and Leo's like, hey, can you check this out? Like days before we're trying to launch this thing. Sure. That story is so fun. And literally it's one of those that there's no combat in it. And that's kind of what I loved about it, because they hit all the tropes, but they didn't put them in a combat zone.
No combat in mine either.
Yeah, yours either.
There will be, but not now.
It'll happen. Don't worry about it.
Why are the rocks on fire?
Exactly.
Okay.
Hey, Andrew, why do you have that special launch rocket? What do you need that for?
Exactly.
One of these days, do you remember that Pauly Shore's In the Army Now?
Yeah.
The movie. One of these days, I want to write that scene where he's like, "Was that our truck, drill sergeant?" And he shoots it backward.
I don't know, man. To me, the penultimate military movie is still always going to be Stripes.
I was just watching that with my kid last week. It's still hilarious. You can't beat those actors.
No.
My grandfather had two favorite World War II movies as a World War II vet. The first was 1941.
Yes.
He said because no other movie was willing to honestly address the combination of incompetence and paranoia that existed right after Pearl Harbor.
Oh, yeah.
And the other one, and his other favorite, oddly enough, was Kelly's Heroes. He said because it was the only movie that was willing to address the fact that nobody wanted to be there.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's my dad's favorite. Kelly's Heroes is my dad's favorite.
Rest in peace, Donald Sutherland.
Absolutely.
Oddball is no longer
Oddball
is no longer worried about tangling with tigers.
What's with this negativity, baby?
Look, baby, I'm a little hung up. I need about 60 feet of bridge.
prototypical.
Fuck it. I'm gonna find a way to put that story. I'm gonna find a way to put that line in my next one. I have to.
So Keith,
Hey, look, I made a bridge.
So is Henchman Press not your? Is that your imprint?
That is not mine. It belongs to a guy named Leo Champion.
An Aussie.
Yeah, he's an Australian. So yeah, and he's been going through all kinds of things in the process of trying to do all this, where he's like moved twice and a few day job changes and all kinds of stuff been going on. So there have been a lot of slowdowns and holdups, and then we got this amazing thing out the door finally. And he and I are talking, and it's like, if we do this again, it's got to go way faster than this. And now I have a bunch of people who seem to think we can work together with. So
yeah,
but
I might be able to pull some people over from Canon too, because somebody made the crack. We had a thread going where Jonathan LaForce, one of our guys, two-tour Marine artillery guy, he put a military romance, American Marine and British female, in the course of Holmes's larger zombie universe. The same one Shane wrote in with the big dead one series.
I need to pick up.
So somebody else makes the comment, another military story written by somebody who doesn't know anything about the military. And this turns into a complete dog pile on this guy as we're basically whipping out 214s on this cat. It went kind of sideways, and we're starting to we added up amongst ourselves real quick. I'm like, just between those of us in this thread, we have a collective century of military experience. Yeah. Then we added up some of the others who work with the company, and partly because we have a couple of 30-year guys, we figured out everybody on the Canon roster or who's about to write for Canon. We're over 250 years of collective military experience.
How have I not written anything for Canon?
Call Holmes, man. We'll take you. We'll fucking talent swap, man.
Holmes will see this damn anthology, and I'll end up doing editor duty again.
Holmes has already seen this anthology. I mean, Holmes, I'm pimping it on my page.
I get to read a bunch of really cool stories from great writers, and I don't have to pay for them up front.
Yeah.
Okay, I can be talked to.
Yeah. I mean, Bill Irwin's our primary copy guy, and I think Michael Morton's more of the line editor guy, and Shane Grice has taken over some of the.
Yeah, he was posting about they're doing some nonfiction military.
He's taken over on that nonfiction project they want to do.
That's a good
Shane was my company commander when I was border PO.
Oh, so you wow. So you were a Manchu? Yeah, okay. Yeah, you automatically have an in then if you got a story.
That's how I actually like Keith. Shane's like, hey, good dudes, And
there's another guy. I forget his name. I would have to look back in my messages because I missed Shane. He was another one of the PLs in that company. And he was up here at Campbell just recently. He's a lieutenant colonel in the reserves still. And we got talking, and I mentioned because one of his guys was my roommate in Korea 25 years ago at Honor Guard Company. And then he says, "Oh yeah, he said I was in Korea not long after you. Where were you at?" He said, "I was in 19 Infantry." I'm like, Shane Grice? And he's like, "Oh man, he was my company commander." I'm like, "Hey Shane, so and so?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, tell him hi." Shane says hi, dude. So I got to be the cool range control guy to those dudes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, which I like being the cool uncle at range control. I don't like being the angry psycho who says no. That's not my job. I'm like, hey man, as long as your stuff's going that way between the trees, we're probably fine. So send it and let's see what happens.
So I think what we've determined is we got 11 really cool stories in this anthology, and we can talk all night about our backgrounds.
And how we're going to use those backgrounds to write more stories for volume 2.
We are definitely going to do that. And God, I hope the readers, because all these stories, it rings out that these are people's real experiences translated into something in fiction.
Yeah.
I mean, they really do. But yeah, so if I asked you guys to do another one, because Leo's already going, do you have ideas for other anthologies?
Yep,
You guys would be interested?
I'm in.
Absolutely.
Oh, damn it, I did something right.
I'm in.
All right, so
Power Plant Whisperer will return.
all right, so at some point, I'm pretty sure there'll be an E4 Mafia 2.
Okay.
Knows what that. We'll call it E4's on the run. I don't know. We'll figure something out.
More tales from the E4 Mafia.
Mafia. As
Or
Leo
just-
put it, title it with the name. It's what it says on the tin. Let it roll. But maybe
Just use the same title and call it Volume 2.
Yeah.
I could do
Tales of
But
the
I was-
E4 Mafia. This side toward enemy. Yeah.
that. Front toward enemy.
That's good. That's good.
I
That's a
like
good
it.
one.
You need to
maybe-
read. You need to read the ending of my first novel. Then it involved a Claymore mine.
Oh, awesome.
Oh,
All right,
I
so
love those things.
okay. So
starting with as we
Go
wrap
ahead.
this up, then, because I know Andrew's on vacation, and I don't want to take him too long away from his family. Andrew, what are you writing now?
They're hopefully asleep. But anyway, so if I can pimp out another short story, like I told you earlier, I had like a great week where I got the one published online, and then I heard from Keith. Well, this month I had this published was my first, June 1st was the date, and then last week a second anthology came out called Minstrels in the Galaxy, and it's somebody
Yeah.
put together.
I saw that.
I saw that.
That's so my story.
I did a live reading with one of the guys from that antho.
Oh, outstanding!
Yeah.
So my story is one of them. It's going to be a 2-part anthology. The first one's sci-fi, which is what mine's in. The second one's coming out in August, and that's all fantasy stories. But everything is inspired by a Jethro Tull song. So Minstrels in the Galaxy, Minstrels
Okay.
in the Gallery, and then the other one's called Tales from the Wood, from the album Songs from the Wood. And then, so it's going to be a 2-volume set. The sci-fi one's out now. So that's a completed thing. And then what I'm working on my first novel, which is an extension of Burping the Worm and Combat Jacks and that whole universe.
Okay. And how can listeners and viewers at home find you on the wild, wild interwebs?
You can, as long as you spell my last name right, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. I'm a social media newbie. I looked at when these started getting published, I started posting more. I think I averaged 3 posts a year for the last 3 or 4 years. So I don't have a lot of content, but it's coming out there. And then I have a website, andrewheymann.com, and then another website that feeds to that, which is warriorwordsmith.com. And either one of those will bring you to the same page. It just got up and running the other day, so sometimes it's through Wix, I believe, and sometimes it's a little touchy. So if you go Google it this very second, it may not hit, but hopefully by the time this airs, it'll be up and running. So andrewheymann.com or warriorwordsmith.com, it'll take you to the same place.
I'm a complete and total Facebook whore. I'll find you.
Since you're talking, Dan, what are you writing now, and then where can they find you?
All right. Right now, I'm writing the third Athenaeum Incorporated novel. I can be found at on Facebook at Dan Kemp Author. You will see a picture of my smiling face smoking a cigar. And then I'm also writing a couple of shorts for different calls that are coming up. But I'm going to try and have the third Athenaeum novel out by LibertyCon next year.
Cool.
Nice. All right. Michael, where can they find you on the wild, wild interwebs, and what are you writing now?
You can find me at michaellavoice.com. That's my website. It's got Tales of the E4 Mafia, big splash page on my front page right now. You can find me. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter or X or whatever they're calling it this week. I am about to start because I got about an hour's, maybe 2 hours worth of revisions on book 2 of Gladius Leagues. And I'm going to start writing book 3 next week. And I've got a publisher who is ready to send me a contract as soon as I get book 3 done. So I'm looking forward to finishing that and getting that series out. For the uninitiated, I know I've talked about it on the show before, but it's set in a future where we have never met aliens despite all of the colonization that we've done across the galaxy. We don't even have armies and navies anymore because we use combat by proxy in a televised combat sport called Gladius Leagues. It's basically a mix of the NFL, the WWE, and MechWarrior. And
That
all of a
sounds
sudden,
fun.
it is fun. And all of a sudden, aliens show up, and they're the kind you don't want to meet, the ones that want to eat us. And our only line of defense is a bunch of prima donna warrior athletes who have no idea how to be real soldiers. So,
Oh, fun.
that's what I'm working on now. Book 3
That's
is
something,
I'm going to start
that's something
doing
I would
that.
read. I would definitely read that, Michael.
I hope you do.
All right. And last but certainly not least, we got Mr. Keith. What are you writing and how can they find you?
Currently working on last round, hopeful edits for the 4th book in the Burn and Bad Karma series. So in this one, Bad Karma goes to Chicago with no adult supervision. If you've read any of the Bad Karma stuff, you understand just how dangerous that is for Chicago. You can find me at keithhedger.com, and you can email me at keith@keithhedger.com. All my social media links are there. And I'll be talking to Leo about some ideas I have for a next round anthology. I was thinking maybe something about warrant officers.
They don't exist. They're a myth.
Exactly. How do you find them? Let's write stories about that.
Well,
Because JR already said he wouldn't do a giant food storage heist story.
I said what?
Okay, you remember H.P. Holo? She wrote the goose story in Sleigh Bells Ring in your anthology.
Yes.
Yeah, she posted something about there's a food site in Missouri where they're storing like 1.4 billion pounds of cheese.
Wow.
And all I want in life is heist stories based around that kind of thing.
I think that came up once.
Stories.
That came up
I'm just like, you're
stories.
stealing food from someplace that's storing 1.4 billion pounds of cheese or 1 million barrels of beer or something. Whatever. But how ludicrous can that get?
Okay.
So,
all right.
What you could do, Keith, is get a bunch of writers. You know, like if you think Ocean's 11, there's all the different side stories of each character. So you have different anthology is the side stories of all these characters, and then at the end it culminates with a finale. Where
Yeah, it's all
come
disconnected
together.
like Pulp Fiction vignettes.
Yes.
And then it all comes
Yeah.
together.
And then so Mike writes about this character, and I write about that story, and Dan writes.
Oh God, it would be the stainless steel rat meets
this guy.
Elmore Leonard. This would be great.
Or terrifying. I'm not sure which, but I'm willing to
all
work with
all
it.
of the above.
Well, the ones that should really be terrified by that concept, Michael, is whoever's got to edit it.
That's true.
Somehow that'll end up being me. I just know it.
All right, so this is the part, dear listener, dear viewer at home, where I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right book, so do your part, people. It's especially important for new authors and new series. If you want more of them, you got to spread the good Lord's work and sign those anthologies with the little 5-star icon. It helps. It tweaks the algorithm. And then, buy one for yourself, buy one for your friends, friends. I don't care. Just, help a starving artist out.
Stroke my ego, damn it.
Absolutely. You can find us on our link tree, linktr.
Stroke your own like Combat Jacks.
You can find us on our link tree at linktr.ee/Blasters and Blades podcast. Again, linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast, where we link to all the things, the BitChutes, the Rumbles, the YouTubes, the Twitters. We have our email, Blasters and Blades podcast @gmail.com for professional purposes only. Yes, you, Michael, we're looking at you. We've got our Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. And more importantly, we have Madam Stabby Stab on the Instagram, Twitter, and emails. For all the hateful content, send it to her. She'll make you cry. We'll all laugh. It's a win-win. And on that link tree, you can find our Spotify website, which, thanks to the buyout, is now a bunch of gobbledygook. But if you go there, you can support the show for as little as 99 cents a month. You can help keep the lights on, and every penny helps. Or you can support the show more directly at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section this is for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee brand coffee till it pours out of their eyeballs, people. Then we will film it and sell it on eBay or wherever you sell videos. I don't know, people. I'm not classy enough for all that. But if you like that coffee brand coffee, links in the show notes. Discount code podcast grunts for 10% off, and we get a little bit of kickback from that too. So every little bit helps. And with that, I would like to thank you. Woo! Look what you made me do, Michael. It's all your fault. Thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. All right. Thank you all for coming on. This was fun. Dan and Andrew, when you get your series that you want to talk about, you come back. We'll do solo interviews. Those are always fun too. And we can find some more panel topics that we can all get nerdy about. So.
Yes.
Great idea.
And with that, I'm going to hit
the
button before we say something that will get us banned.